Okay, now by us upping the size slightly of the second grass texture that we placed on that smaller terrain, by upping the size of it a bit, it's just helped to blend it into the larger terrain that's on the sides here. Yeah, you can see it best in this top viewpoint. We've got our initial large terrain, which is using 2 different grass materials. Our smaller terrain here, which is again using 2 different grass materials, different to the main terrain. But we've made these pieces of grass larger than this one, and that's to help blend the 2 together a bit better. As you can see through here, you can't really see where one terrain ends and another one begins. The grass is blending quite well. And the reason when we were working on the terrain in the editor there, we took it right back down to 0 here, was so that the grass wouldn't grow over our path. Now, you don't necessarily have to do it that way. We could have left part of the terrain in there, and then we can go into what they call up here. Vue has like a brush editor for your ecosystems. You can go into that and delete parts of the path, but I like a bit more control than that, so I generally like to take the terrain down to 0 so that I know that no grass will ever grow here. And that also gives me the option then of, which is what I'm going to do, of painting in an actual bitmap of dirt for a path, using a separate plane object that I'm going to place underneath of these 2 terrains. Now getting back though to what I was talking about before with the angle that we're looking at for the model at the moment, we're looking directly front on to those stairs, and like I said, if you were walking up to it up this path, that's the view you're generally going to get, but we can make this image look a bit more interesting by moving our camera, which is what we're going to do next. Again, we could pull in a bit on the model. So again, guys, you've got to remember what me creating this beauty render is for this model. I'm not really worrying about my environment. I'm worrying about the environment to make a pretty picture, but my main focus of these renders has always got to be the garden terrace model. Generally what I would do is I would probably pull in until the edges of the model, the edge of the screen here is right up to the edges of the model, which I still may have to do, but I do want to include a bit more of the environment to show you guys what Vue can do as far as environments go. If I pull in too close on the model, you're really going to lose a lot of what the environment is, and that's one of Vue's strengths. I use the program, like I said, because I create beauty shots for these models, so generally I pull right up on the model. I'm not so worried about getting renders of the environment, but I want to try and show you guys what the program does. So I'm going to pull back a little bit more than I normally would to create these sort of beauty renders, because we're going to get I'm going to create another beauty render where we pull right up close on part of the model here. So I can excuse it that way to the guys at Eon Software if they question me. Okay, I think the blend between the 2 is fine. Again, like I said, I created the grass here on the second terrain to be a little bit bigger. I wanted it to look a bit more overgrown. I'm going to be adding 2 more terrains on top of this, on this side and on this side, with some hero trees as hero objects, which is just basically an object that is in the foreground and is really high resolution. I'll be doing that on either side, but for the moment we're concentrating just on these 2 terrains and the ecosystem we've laid down. Alright, and again, color correction is going to happen at the very end once the final render is done. Sniper Echo says that doing a render like this in Blender takes crazy time. It honestly isn't worth it when you see this. Again, that's, a lot of people that use Eon Vue here, this software, complain that it takes a long time to render. And like I said, if you stick to the default settings, it can, depending on how much you've got going on in the scene. But I still find it quite quick, really, for the amount of polygons it has to deal with, guys. I mean, remember, look down here in the corner. We're working with over 1 billion polygons now. So each one of these blades of grass is unique. Well, it's a polygon, so it's not a plane or anything like that. We're working with over 1 billion polygons, so it's going to take a bit to render it out. But it's interesting you say that Blender takes a long time to render. I know that the V-Ray renderer in Max can render out pretty quickly, but again, you're really restricted to what you can do in V-Ray because you can't, even Max you can't throw unlimited polygons at, whereas View can take tens of billions of polygons without a problem. I'm looking at my memory here, and it's really, remember, this model on its own is 15 million polys, and it takes up about, I think it's taking up at least 8 megabytes of memory. I'm using about 12 megabytes of memory now. So, and that's for all of these billion polygons of grass. So, and the memory usage will go up gradually as we add more bits and pieces, but I think the program does pretty well for what it does, for what it has to deal with. The result, that's right. Alright, now let's get back to what I was saying about, I'm just going to delete my stack here a bit. This is just, when View does a render, it puts it in the stack so that you can jump through them to check them all out. That's basically what it's doing. Yeah, it's using 12 meg, but you got to remember too, I've got a lot of other stuff going on in the background. I mean, I've got OBS loaded up over here, I have Adobe Audition going, I've got my chat client going, so it's not View on its own using that memory. It's 6 or 7 different programs I have running on my machine at the same time at the moment. So, and again though, if you run out of memory, which is, I was saying to you guys, the more memory you can give this program, the better. But if you do run out of memory, it just means it's going to hit your hard drive, so it's just going to slow things down a little bit. It's not going to crash. No, this is Eon View, Alchemist. So let me show you guys what it is. For anyone new that mightn't have been watching yesterday, Eon View is the software, and all it does is create natural landscapes and environments. That's the whole purpose of the software. That's all it does. You can't create 3D models in it. All you can do is create environments with it. It's a great piece of software. You can download a free version called the Personal Learning Edition, the PLE, from their website. I believe the only restriction is you can't render out larger than 1920 by 1080. But you can certainly download it for the Personal Learning Edition for nothing and play around with it. Check it out. See if you like it. You can use V-Ray to do environments, and like I was saying to the guys yesterday, the studio, the ArchViz studio I work at, we use V-Ray a lot because they're really concerned with just a small area like the building itself. They're not so concerned with an environment. So if you're just making a grassy lawn, V-Ray is perfectly good enough for that, and the studio used that. But if you really want to create proper 3D environments, this software is unparalleled. There is nothing like it, like I said, that I'm aware of. It's unique. It's expensive. If you're buying the top of the line version, it's expensive. But they do make an artist version, which is pretty reasonable. It's still, I think, around $300 or $400, so it's not cheap. But the professional version that the studios use, which is the one here that I'm showing you, the PLE version is the same as this version here. It's exactly the same, just those restrictions. So if you want to try it out, download it for free. You'll be seeing the same thing that I'm seeing here. It's exactly the same program. You just have the restriction of the render size being no bigger than 1920 by 1080. But for instance, we're only rendering 16 by 16 here, so that wouldn't be a problem for the free version. But if you did want to buy it, they give away a free version called Pioneer, which is really restricted. I don't recommend anyone use that. They have an artist version though, which is about halfway between the Pioneer version and the studio version here. So I'm not suggesting you guys buy the studio version. It really does add nothing if you're not a design studio. The artist version does 3/4 of what the studio version does, and it's 3/4 of the price. So but the PLE is completely free, which is this version, because it's meant for personal learning. You can download it and you can use it free of charge. So if you want to check the program out, guys, do download it. Download the PLE and check it out. Like I said, it's free, and you can play around with it as much as you want. And it does come with plant models that you can test, that you can use. So it has trees, it has some grass. It doesn't have the grass that I'm using because I purchased this separately from a company called Azel Effects. But it does come with grass, it does come with trees and all that sort of thing. You'll probably see me using plants while I create this beauty render that aren't in the free version, and that's because they're either going to be plants that I've bought or plants that I've made in SpeedTree, which I generally like to do a lot. If you use the Unreal Engine, you know that SpeedTree comes with that program. You won't be able to use the plants that you create in that version of the software because it's restricted to Unreal. But I have their main version of their software, which is not the Unreal version. It's the one that they sell on their website. I create my trees in that. I export them as either FBXs or OBJs and import them into Vue and put them in my scenes that way. But like I said, the free version comes with some trees. It comes with a good variety of trees. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like one tree. I think they give you about 30 different types of trees to play with. So check it out, play around with it, see if you like it. Create something interesting with it. The best way to judge whether you like software or not is to actually use it. And like I say to you guys, I'm on Twitch, so to encourage you guys to try these things, just to play with them. You don't have to be creating a work of art with it to put online. Just install the software, play around with it, see whether you like it, see what you can create with it. That's half the fun. That's what 3D is for. 3D is meant to be fun. So it's free, play with it, try it. But yeah, like I said, you don't need to buy the studio version. The studio version is really meant for studios. It just has some extra things in it that studios would use. If you're not a studio, then there's no point. The only reason I have it and I use it is because the studio bought it and allow me to use it at home. So and they bought it because they're a studio. So. The software, the artist version, the interface is exactly the same. The software all looks the same. It's just the functionality behind it differs between the artist version and Infinite or Extreme, were the other two versions that they make. And this is what you're looking at here is what they call Extreme, their Extreme version, which is their top of the line version. Again, only for studios. If you're not a studio, it makes no difference. You wouldn't want to use it. This version, but the artist version, which looks the same, has the same buttons and everything else, is good for artists if you're an individual creating artwork. Okay, so we have our model here though. We're looking at directly onto it, like I said, which is natural if you're walking up a path, but it doesn't make for a very interesting render. So let's grab our camera. Let's move our camera here off to the side a little bit. I'm also going to rotate my camera just a bit. Alchemist says, I was using i2 Forest. Yeah, no, i2 Forest is pretty cool too, but it doesn't do what this program does. There is nothing that does what this does. That's what I find quite incredible, that no other company have made software like this. Eon Software have been the only one that I've been using the software for years, and in all the years that I've used this, I've never come across anything else really like it. Like I said, I think World Machine is probably the closest thing you get to it, but even that really doesn't compare to this. Not as easy to use as this. It's a lot more complicated, and it doesn't have as many options as this has either. But i2 Forest, I know people that use that as well. I mean, that gets the job done if you're not really after a really large environment. But all this program was made for was creating environments in 3D. So Like I was saying to you guys yesterday, you don't necessarily have to use it to create animated 3D fly-throughs, which you can. That's what it was made for. You can use it if you're a concept artist, just to render out a background for your artwork. Use it that way as well. So don't feel because it's a 3D program you have to create 3D, full-on animated 3D with it. You don't. Just render out stills and use them in your artwork as background. And I know a lot of concept artists that do that. So what we've done here is I've moved my camera off center, and I'm also, I think, going to select our garden terrace, and I'm also going to rotate that a bit off center. Now let's do another test render and compare the two. Remember, we've made no changes to the environment, to the ecosystem or anything. All I've done is I've moved my camera off center and I've rotated the garden terrace a little bit. I'm just using this as an example to you guys to the composition of your scene. We might as well do it here, even though we've only just started doing this scene. We're a long way from done. I just want to illustrate a point. Just a simple, with regard to doing an interesting composition for your artwork, just a simple movement of your camera and of the object you're actually rendering, what sort of a difference that can make. To create just a bit more visual interest in your renders or in your art. It doesn't even have to be a 3D render. This will work for any sort of artwork you're doing. I'm going to wait, pardon me, I'm going to wait for it to completely render out, and then we're going to jump between the old render and this new one. And again, remember these renders you're seeing here are what they call preview quality, so they're really, really low quality. When we get to doing proper broadcast quality, once we've finished setting up the complete environment, the quality of the grass and things will improve dramatically. Because this is just a very quick preview render, they call it. Just so you can set up your scene relatively quickly. So yeah, again to Sniper Echo talking about how slow Blender renders compared to this. Do remember that this is a preview render, it's not a proper render. And the normal renders are going to take a bit longer than this. But please guys, if you are interested in the software, I have nothing to do with Eon apart from the fact that I'm a broker for them, which means I make 3D models and I sell them on their Cornucopia 3D website. That's the only connection I have to the company. I don't get commissions for their software. I have nothing to do with the actual company themselves. I sell my models on their website. They take a percentage of my sales. And then that's the end of the relationship between me and this company. So I'm not I have no ulterior motive with regard to you trying the software out. It's up to you, and I have nothing to do with Eon View. It's just I sell my models on their website and they get a cut of my sales. So it's not like they're paying me. If anything, I'm paying them to put my stuff on their site. It's nearly done. It's at 92%, and like I said, I wanted to finish doing its render so we can jump back between the old camera positions and the new one. Because when you're setting up your scenes, it's really important, like I said, to consider composition and balance, which was why when we created the model, we created it so that the eye flows through the model up to the dome and back again. There's this flow that happens through the image. Sniper Echo says, yeah, I can see you're overselling their software capabilities. Yeah, like I said though guys, I have nothing to do with the company, apart from the fact that my models are up for sale on their cornucopia site, that's it. They don't give me a kickback for sales of their software or anything like that. I just recommend and show you guys the stuff that I personally use in my work. In these images I use here for cornucopia, I also use to sell my model on the creative market. And the creative market has nothing to do with Eon at all. It's a completely separate marketplace. Again, I'm a broker for them, so they get a percentage of my sales. That's the end of the relationship though, as far as me and Eon go. I use their software, I like their software. There's nothing on the market like it that you can use, so I use it. And the studio bought it, I didn't buy it. So. I would buy it, not this version, I'd probably buy the artist version if I needed to. Because like I said, the artist version will do everything you need. For a third of the cost. Yeah, I like the user interface too, and again, you guys know I'm really big on nice and clean, as Sniper Echo just said. I'm really big on clean, easy to use interfaces. I hate interfaces that have nested menus, or try and be a bit different, like I say ZBrush's interface is a bit of a nightmare to use. I'm sure once you get used to it all, it's fine. It's just so different from everything else. So the cleaner the interface, the better for me. Hey Leetness, how are you? Good to see you. Okay, it's almost finished its render, and like I was saying, I wanted to do this to illustrate a point to you guys. Yeah, I know you like ZBrush, Leetness. I was waiting for you to pop in and say that. And listen, ZBrush is unique too. There is nothing really like it either. I mean, there's Mudbox, but Autodesk aren't interested in using that, developing that anymore, so. I'm sure he was just waiting in the background. You were waiting to come into the chat and say you like ZBrush. I know you like ZBrush. I like ZBrush too. Just the interface I don't like. I like a nice, clean, easy to use interface. But ZBrush does what it does well. Okay, so let's jump between these two renders. This is our initial render where we're looking directly on, and this is the one where we've moved the camera off center and also rotated the model slightly. You're showing me a link? Okay, let's have a look. So this is something Leetness. Oh, okay, this is a character Leetness has been working on. Very nice. Like I said, I really love the detail you put into your models, Leetness. And the armor work is great. The padding is great too. Yeah, it's really nice. And the boots. Yeah, no, it's looking really good. Yeah, you put some really nice detail into that model. Nice work. Very nice work. Bleeding said he was working on the bottom part most of the day. Okay. The boots are nice. I like the gloves, or the... I'm not sure what you call that part that sits over the top of the arm. But the detail is very nice. Yeah, Alchemist says he'd like to learn ZBrush, but after Max it's hard to get used to. I agree. That's looking very nice, Alec. Really nice work. I'm the same way, Alchemist. I'm used to using Max. I use ZBrush. I do use ZBrush. But it's certainly a bit jarring jumping between Max and that program. Just the interface. It's about to be done, Litmus says. Okay, well, I want to see it textured, dude. Texture it up. I want to see one of your characters textured. You design the, you do the detailing really so nicely. It would just look so good textured. Texture it. I like looking at all your work, guys, even if you don't texture it up. But do remember, textured models look amazing. Litmus said he's going to move on to her face and hair next. Okay, cool. Well, I look forward to seeing that. I'm sure you'll do a good job. I've seen your face work before. It's always good. And the hair work you've done as well. But yeah, as Alchemist was saying, it is jarring jumping between 3D Studio Max and ZBrush. But I like ZBrush, and like I said, ZBrush is very good at what it does for sculpting as well. I just wish they'd, I don't know, change the interface, but they're not going to do that for me, so people are used to the way it is now. Although I did install a plugin for ZBrush that allowed me to rotate with my mouse more like I do in Max, and I found since doing that it's really helped my use in ZBrush. I just never liked the way you moved or rotated in ZBrush using the default interface. But this plugin allows you to use your mouse like you do in Max to rotate around a model or to zoom in. And since doing that, I found ZBrush a lot better to use. But getting back to what we were talking about here with the composition. Where are we? Going between front on to just angling the camera and rotating the model slightly will just give your composition a bit more interest. By all means, like I said, this is a doing a render from this direction is accurate. You'd walk down a path and you'd see it like that. But by just moving your camera and rotating the model, you achieve two things. You add more visual interest to the model itself by looking at it at an angle as opposed to directly on. It just makes a more visually interesting render. And moving the camera off the path helps to add more interest to the landscape. Okay, that was just the point I was wanting to make, was to show you guys how just making small changes to your camera position or the rotation of your model when you're doing a render can really add to the look of a rendered image, a composition. Alchemist says, yeah, it's cool after saw Bruce Lee sculpt. Yeah, no, ZBrush you can create some amazing stuff in ZBrush. Sculpting in I remember when they released ZBrush and I hadn't used Mudbox. ZBrush was the first sculpting program I'd used years ago. I was quite amazed at what you could sculpt up in it. And it's still better than Mudbox, I have to admit. I can see why Autodesk decided not to compete with ZBrush, because ZBrush does it better. It does the whole sculpting of polygons much better. Although I still prefer the interface of Mudbox. I wish I could get ZBrush functionality in Mudbox, with Mudbox interface. But like I was saying, just installing that plugin in ZBrush for my mouse has really helped make the program easier to use. And it does, you can create some amazing things in ZBrush. Alright, now at the moment we've just laid down two terrains, very basic terrains. We've used 2 different grass materials on 2 different terrains. We still have to create a proper path, which I again, like I said, I want to do in Mari. I want to paint that in properly. I don't want to use materials that come with Vue to do that. I want it to look a bit more unique. But certainly for the terrains, the default materials you get in Vue are quite good enough. Let's close that down. The default materials here that you get in Vue are good enough, particularly if you're going to be covering the terrain with plants. And like I said, so far we've put down 2 different grasses. Like, always try and get a bit of variety. Don't just stick to one grass. Put 2 in, or even 3. Because in nature you never really got just one type of a plant in a large number. There's always a variety of plants, even grass. So a few different varieties will add to the realism. So we've put down 2 grasses. I actually want to add some flowers as well, even though this is going to be I'm going to set this in like a forested environment. I still want some flowers to add a bit of colour. I don't want green. Leitner says Mudbox never was even near what ZBrush offers. Well, no, that's why they've stopped developing it, isn't it? ZBrush, like I said, is always been the best at what it does. Autodesk, I think, tried to compete with ZBrush with Mudbox, but Autodesk aren't developing Mudbox anymore. They did release the 2017 version, but they didn't add anything new. They just did some bug fixes, so I don't think Autodesk are really that interested in continuing development for Mudbox. Which is a shame, just in that the interface is much nicer to use than ZBrush Mudboxes, but it can't do what ZBrush does. ZBrush is the best at sculpting. It just is. And I think Autodesk know that. So I just wish ZBrush would change their interface. Anyway. So we're always try and use a couple of varieties of, even if you're just putting grass down. I do want to add some flowers to this scene a little bit later on when we start doing a bit more work to start fleshing it out, because I want to add some more colour to the scene. Again, I'm thinking the composition of it. I don't want too much green. I want a bit of colour. I'm going to be putting it in a forested environment, and I'm going to be adding another 2 terrains on either side here with hero trees on them. So we're going to be adding another terrain on top of these 2 terrains on this side and another one on this side. When I say terrains, don't think that I'm adding mountains. I'm adding like small mounds of terrain, like small hills that I'm going to be setting up hero trees on. And again, a hero image or a hero object is just a high resolution object close to the camera. Leitner says maybe it's a steep learning curve, but interface makes sense. Yeah, no, I'm sure it does. And the more I've used my ZBrush, the more I've gotten used to its interface. I work in ZBrush. I do some work in ZBrush, but it just has an unconventional interface compared to a lot of other 3D software. I think that's really what I mean. But you're right. Once you get used to the way ZBrush does things, then it's not terrible. It's just not clean and simple and easy to use, that's all. The more you use any piece of software, though, the easier it becomes to use. So, well, it's true of anything. So we've, like I said, I'm going to be creating another 2 terrains. They're not really large terrains like this, though. They're going to be small, like mounds that I'm going to put one on this side, one on this side. I'm going to be putting in 2 hero objects, hero trees in the foreground, and then we're going to be putting the entire scene within a forested environment. And I'm going to be adding some flowers, and we still have to do our proper bitmap path through the middle. So they're all things still to come in the render. Today was just getting the initial grass sections laid in, and setting up our render settings for the right dimensions for the image. Yeah, no, that's right, Linus. Mudbox's interface is a lot like Max's. It's very cleanly laid out, easy to find stuff, and they have that section at the bottom to easily and quickly get to different parts of the program. That's Mudbox, of course. Yeah, well, that's right. They don't have the brushes that ZBrush have for sculpting in Mudbox. You can do a lot more in ZBrush than you can do in Mudbox. So yeah, no, look guys, I agree. I'm not saying don't use ZBrush because I use it. It's really, there's nothing like it either on the market, so I do use ZBrush. I just want the interface changed, that's all. They're not going to, of course. But when are they going to release the new version of ZBrush? They've been talking about that forever. They've been talking about the new release of ZBrush, but that's been happening for like a year now, and they haven't released a new one. Anyway. Hopefully soon. We'll see what... And they always... Every time they do an update to that software, it's always pretty impressive. They add a lot of new stuff. Really useful new stuff. Pixologic. So I'm looking forward to what they're putting in the new version. Whenever they release it. So anyway, getting back to our image here, we've got our initial 2 terrains with grass laid down. This is just a base sort of for the scene, because we're going to be putting hero trees on top of it. We're going to be putting flowers into it. We're going to put it in a forested environment. We have to fix up our path texture correctly. You're looking forward to version 4 revision 8, yeah. Everyone wants Gizmo, yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too, but like I said, they're taking their time. They've been talking about it for a long time. I remember, it must be at least 12 months they've been talking about revision 8. Or was it ZBrush 5 they were talking about? I thought they were talking about releasing version 5. What is that? Are you talking about ZBrush, Sniper Echo? What is ZBrush? If you're talking about ZBrush, it's like Mudbox, but better. Same sort of thing, they sculpt meshes, 3D meshes in ZBrush. It's really just a sculpting program for 3D. That's what it does, and it does it very well. Again, a lot of studios use it. Game studios use it a lot as well. Archviz studios, not so much. But certainly game studios, and cinema work it's used a lot as well. Used a lot for character work. I think that's why Leetness uses it quite a bit. Oh, what is Gizmo? I'm sure Leetness can explain it to you better than I can. You'll see me using ZBrush at some stage, particularly if I show you guys my workflow for photogrammetry, because I generally use ZBrush then. Yeah, so when I do photogrammetry work, I'll jump into ZBrush to clean up the mesh. But like I said, ZBrush is used a lot more for character work. I think we may leave it there for today though, guys. Like I said, we've got our initial laydown done. We have our 2 terrains with some grass on it. We've placed our model. We've set up our rendered settings so that we can render our previews relatively quickly.
Often it is difficult for a person to control a complicated
so when we come, I'll be back on again tomorrow, and we can start working on either adding some flowers to the scene to add a bit more colour, or I might work on the path, or I might bring in one of those hero trees and work on those 2 side pieces of terrain on either side here. I'll see how I go tomorrow. But we got a bit done. Like I said, we've laid down our initial grass. We've moved our camera off center so that we add a bit more interest to the render. So when we come back tomorrow, we'll continue working on the environment here for this garden terrace model. And remember too, we are going to be creating another beauty render where we zoom right up close, because we did put a lot of detail into the textures for this model. So I do want to show that in a render. So we'll do a far away render like this, and then we're going to do another render where we zoomed up pretty close to the model. But we'll do that once we're finished setting up the environment. Before we take it into Photoshop to do color correction. But we'll get to that down the line. When we come back tomorrow, we'll continue fleshing out this environment for this render. I will be back on again at 5 PM tomorrow. That's Pacific time in the US, 12 PM in Australia, 1 AM in the UK. Remember guys, you keep an eye on my Twitter page at PhilDoes3D. I always post 15 minutes before I'm about to go live. If you're not sure, but my schedule, like I said, does not change. I always stream on a Monday, a Tuesday and a Wednesday at 5 PM Pacific time in the US. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me and watching. I do appreciate it. Thank you guys for popping into chat and saying hello. I will be back on again tomorrow. Hopefully I'll see you then. Thank you everybody that has been watching the stream, and yeah, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. You're quite welcome, Sniper Echo. I enjoyed the stream. I enjoyed chatting to you guys. So I look forward to chatting to you again tomorrow. I will be back on again at 5 PM. I'll see you then, guys.